South Africa is marking 30 years of democracy this year. Now, the stakes are high as we head into the 2024 elections with independent candidates and new parties fighting for seats in parliament. The ANC will be hoping to keep its majority and remain in power. Let's discuss this now with ANC First Deputy Secretary General Nomvula Mokonyane. A very good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good evening to the viewers as well. Thanks for inviting us.
We just coming from a voter registration weekend, busy weekend for political parties. The IEC over the week were telling us that we're seeing about 27 million voters who have registered. From your perspective as the ANC, how did it go? How do you see this?
It's been going very well. We have been throughout the length and breadth of this country. We have the footprint across every ward in this country. We have targeted the youth vote because of the realities of our own voters' role in South Africa, that it is predominantly older people. So the young people have to take responsibility and be part of determining the future by being in the voters' role, whether for or against the ANC. But as a nation, we need to promote patriotism by promoting voter registration. We've gone to great length, including using online voter registration, training volunteers of the African National Congress on how to use the online voter registration process. We have also taken voter registration as a precursor to the big day of millions of South Africans coming out to vote for the ANC.
What would you say from your vantage point is the voter apathy for young people? I mean, young people seem to be despondent. They don't seem to be interested in politics. Do you feel the same way as the ANC? Do you see the same things that we are seeing where young people are not interested in registering? They are not interested in voting for either party?
Actually, young people are highly opinionated. South African youth are highly opinionated, including those that are as yet to decide on who to vote for. They have views. It's not because of apathy. You also find that because of this democracy we have, they've got a plethora of other platforms that they actually use. We are quite also cognizant of the fact that in the last elections we had challenges even of the absence of formal structures of the ANC Youth League. A progressive youth alliance was quite weakened. But the work that we have done, this past Friday, I spent the entire day from 10 in the morning. We left Tshwane around 4, registering first-time voters who are now going to be residents here in Gauteng because they come from different provinces to come and study. So the movement of young people, and I think that's one of the things that we have now come to master, that we mustn't always look for young people in their homes and do door-to-door at home. We must also find them where they are. We go to where they always gather. We work together with them, and of importance, we use the very means of them going out, because over the past years, everybody was supposed to go into a voting station. Now with the advanced interventions of the IEC, they can actually register online whilst hanging out with their own friends, irrespective of the time, as we are going to be continuing again for the entire week until the proclamation to reach out to young people.
You spoke and touched on the ANC Youth League. What role are they playing now? And do you feel that with them now formalized to a certain extent in comparison to the last time around, are you expecting anything better with them talking to the youth, speaking the language of the youth? Because as you said yourself, that there is also this perception for the ANC, it's just old people in parliament, octogenarians who don't understand the problems of the youth.
Not only the ANC. I've never referred to the ANC.
Well, I'm talking to an ANC person.
Okay, fine. Actually, the ANC, you know, I was telling some young people today that we can pride ourselves that we have had young people who have been in parliament over years, and today you may see them being 40, 45, but they came in when they were even below 30. I come from Kagiso. The first legislature here, we had Mandisa Chikeka. She was only 25, and she was a member of the Gauteng legislature. So the development, the 30 years, must also be looked at in terms of those that have been there over time. And the absence of a functional youth league also made it difficult for young people to influence and persuade. Ask me where we are today. Young people are not now asking for favors. Young people are influencing even how and what must be contained in the manifesto. They are involved on determining what must be the trajectory of economic development in our country, even in the discussions in the ANC. What historically you would think it's the old guard that will deal with issues around the economic perspective and the way forward, it's young people that raise those issues. I'm sure you heard Comrade President when we were in Bobela say, after meeting with the ANC Youth League around issues of beneficiation, this is what we are going to do. And I think young people in South Africa must then appreciate that. Secondly, as I'm saying, they took me out. They're taking all of us out to the tertiary institutions as a Progressive Youth Alliance, SASCO, the Young Communist League, the ANC Youth League, as a collective, working with other youth social movements. And what is of importance there is that they are even making the ANC to adapt and not only be archaic in how it functions. And you look at them and you say, once upon a time I was their age, and it's so good now that the future looks bright. There are generations that are now entering the space. And I can tell you now, we've registered more young people than before.
Are you confident of the youth vote? Are you confident that going into elections, that young people will vote for the ANC, young people resonate with the ANC in its current form at the moment?
Young people have every responsibility to vote for the African National Congress for the following reasons. One, it is only the ANC that has actually championed the issues around access to free education. It is the ANC that came with the policies that have been contested around NSFAS, including what Comrade Nzimande just announced a week ago around funding for the missing middle. It's a major breakthrough. We understand that coming from a middle class doesn't mean that the family can afford, because we know the economy has hit hard, worse on the black middle class and other affluent sectors of our society. Secondly, it is the ANC itself that has been influenced by young people through the ANC Youth League and the PYA and bringing it into the ANC, that today we are talking in the January 8th statement about beneficiation, about investing on skills development, about a generational mission on not only on leadership, but even on the administration of the country. Hence today, the issue about experience for those who are first-time job seekers is no longer a requirement. But we have millions of young people, graduates and non-graduates, that also do require attention, and hence there are various uptakes like you see here in Gauteng, Nasispan. We have challenges around substance abuse, the social ills. We must work together. The Kimoja programs that are being championed. There is a lot. And watch for our manifesto, but also having learned. We have learned a lot out of the 30 years. They were not an easy 30 years. But there is so much that we have learned out of those 30 years that are going to make us a better and a much more advanced organization that can carry the aspirations of the people of South Africa.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned what you've learned over the past 30 years. And there's been the good and the bad, like anything else in life. Now, coming out of that, there's people who will then say that, but there are areas where the ANC has failed. In fact, even some members of the ANC have admitted that we failed the people in the last 30 years. How do you deal with those failures? Because one would believe that those are the important things that will decide whether you keep a person's vote who has voted for the ANC before to say, I've been voting for the ANC for all these good reasons. But now, if they are falling short in certain areas and those areas are not being addressed, why should I keep voting for them?
Look, those areas, we're dealing with them, both internal and external issues. We're dealing with them, and hence we have also resolved that we must invest on the renewal of the organization, but also the renewal of the society we live in, and ensure that there are values that help us to shape a new nation. the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu was talking about the Rainbow Nation, must deal with the scourge of racism, what we have seen now in Limpopo. We must deal with the issues of gender-based violence and femicide, and ensure that that has now been put into law. Coming into the 7th administration, we intensify the work that must be done. Remember, even on provision of basic services, in all the services, water, electricity, sanitation, South Africa's delivery rating is way above 70%. What is required now is reliability of the services, the challenge of load shedding. Many of our communities, your rural areas, have access to electricity. What makes us to have challenges is load shedding. We've reached out to communities that have never had an access to electricity supply in the furthest of our country. Secondly, we also have a situation where we've not only built houses. I was talking today in another platform saying we've not only built giveaway houses, what is commonly known as RDP houses. We've given South Africans assets, people who ordinarily would not have had an asset. The person owns the house, the land, the value of that property is something that you can use to invest and grow your own economy and make sure that you become a better person, rather than selling it in a wrong way. So the delivery of houses is not just brick and mortar. It's about giving back the dignity of an African woman who historically was not even qualified to own a property. The quality of education. I mean, we all now are concerned about the intake in the tertiary institutions, all because of the functioning basic education system in South Africa that has now delivered thousands and thousands of young people who want to go to tertiary. What must we do? We must also diversify and not only direct young people to consider university, technical colleges, and many other methods of them actually becoming better people are things that we also have to look at. So out of the success, there's a crisis now there. What does it require? It now requires that there must be collaboration. There must be an understanding between basic education and higher education, but of importance as well. Remember, these are young people who started in a no-fee school, whose parents have been receiving the child support grant. And these are products of a caring government that has looked after them, that has nurtured them, that now they have to go to university. We can't dump them when they now have to go to university, when we have taken care of them up to so far. So it is those things that now we're beginning to master, that the challenges with NSFAS have to do with the inability to integrate. So it becomes important that from grade 10, there must be joint planning and coordination. Secondly, there must be empowerment of the university management and so forth, so that we don't have challenges of accommodation and stuff, things that we are also dealing with. The last thing is about the economy. We need an economy that works for South Africans, putting national interests first. And hence I'm saying one of the things that we really appreciate is how the young people in the ANC, representing millions of young people, are actually giving meaning to economic freedom in their lifetime. I nearly said in our lifetime. in their lifetime. And they're raising a very critical issue. We have these mineral resources. Why must we actually take out all these deposits and take them out of the country without processing them? That is one of the things that we are now busy with implementing. The second thing, it is young people who are saying, let's look at the banking sector in South Africa. It can't be a monopoly that continues to be like this. Let's see how we use all these grants and resources, funds that come from government. How do we make sure that we have a better state bank that can be able to distribute, that can be able to absorb, unlike what we are going through now with the retrenchments in the post bank? It is the young people thanks to the PYA that is now functioning, participating, and not only looking at who becomes a member of parliament, but talking to the things that can really unlock the problems of high unemployment rate of young people. And it's that ANC Youth League that must be commended.
But I hear, and I mean, obviously, if you look at issues like education, you look at issues of jobs and houses, load shedding, which is a big problem. Some of us couldn't watch Bafana last night because we had load shedding. One then argues, Nomvula, that, but you've had 30 years. You've had 30 years to give me free education. You've had 30 years to make sure that young people have jobs. You've had 30 years to do this thing. Why is it taking so long? Why has it taken this long?
But you know, you must also complete what you are saying.
Yes.
You have had 30 years and there are millions that have benefited. Agree?
Yes.
You have 30 years with millions having benefited. And because of what has been a problem of South Africa, that was not 30 years. Years and years of inequality. Years and years of dispossession. Years and years of an untransformed economy. We can't, and we have never said, by, come the 27th of April 2024, we would have emancipated our people economically. Nobody had said that. What we have said is that we must continue to work better together with the people of South Africa. Those that have not actually seen anything or who have not been touched through the government policy interventions of the ANC, appreciate that you can point at somebody and believe that tomorrow it will be your turn. And that's what is happening. You're raising the issue of load shedding. We have had a problem. I mean, I come from Kagiso. You know, in Kagiso we only had electricity in 1993. Yeah? So you come and talk of 30 years. How
well,
old
other
was
people
I?
would say
no,
that.
I'm just saying
but
you,
other people would say that I still don't have electricity in those 30 years.
That's what I'm exactly what you are saying.
Yes.
Other people are still yet to receive this electricity. We must spread this cake. We must make sure that it reaches out to everybody, and we must make sure that it is reliable. And therefore, what we must not do is to deny the fact that there are others who have been patiently waiting, and their patience is becoming thinner and thinner. However, we must also not deny the fact that we are unraveling a situation that is over 300 years old. So, what is 30 years? 30 years doesn't mean we didn't do anything. We committed mistakes because there was never a blueprint of how to serve a racialized, highly racially polarized nation.
Would you say that you've learned then in those 30 years?
We have learned even on how to provide free education, like I'm saying, the disjointed relations between higher education and basic education. We have learned on how to avoid a situation where the gap between the haves and the have-nots widens. We must now bring back the issues of beneficiation. We must deal with the issues of the skills revolution into reality. We must put our national interests first. Nothing must leave this country without us having benefited from that we produce. Thirdly, we have also learned on how to deal with issues of land distribution, because in the past we just allocated people land without giving them the necessary support, and hence those portions of land were not all productive. But it is also not just agricultural land. We must also look at urban land so that then it can benefit in terms of property relations.
Would you then say, as we move further ahead into the conversation, that from your vantage point, is the ANC in a good position to win the elections comfortably?
We will win comfortably because we've gone out and did what we've never done before. We went out and reviewed the manifesto of the previous term of office with the people of South Africa. We now got the feedback. We understand the impact. We also have created capacity to monitor and evaluate, something that was never there. But also we want to rely on independent information that is for the good of all South Africans, such as the work and the product coming from the Statistician General. Let that be another platform that we use as a reference point of the information that we need. And it is not only the ANC that says we have done well. The report of the stats, coming from Stats SA, confirm that we need to accelerate the pace, but so much has been done. And that is exactly that we must celebrate. We must also celebrate that in these 30 years, we have had free and fair democratic elections in this country. I'm sure you know what is happening in other countries. And as democracy matures, we must also safeguard that electoral system. Secondly, we must allow the right of people in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of association. So the ANC is better poised. Is better poised because, look, there's no other better teacher than experience. Secondly, that we are not a party that is contesting against another political party. We're contesting to emancipate the people of South Africa. Others are there to contest and contest against the ANC, and they've made the ANC the enemy of the people of South Africa, and they think they can do that. The enemy of the people of South Africa is unemployment, it's poverty, it's inequality.
But those are the problems that, again, to our conversation earlier on, that many people, rightfully or wrongfully, will blame it on the ANC as the ruling party, as the party in government, to say, yes, here are the problems, but how are you going to solve it? I haven't had a job in 10 years. How do you solve that? I'm a graduate that, can't get a job. I'm living on 350 rands. How do you make my life better? And those are, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, the simple, easiest, I think, low-hanging fruit that many a voter are looking at to say, which party will solve that problem for me? That makes sure that I have a job.
What I'm saying to you is that it is only the ANC, and you can see already the semblance of turning around the functioning of the public service and creating job opportunities. The nurse is funny here in Gauteng. What you see Public Works doing now under Comrade Galala around the public works programs of building bridges, building infrastructure, ensuring that you create employment opportunities and you skill young people. The role that each and every component can play. Whilst we acknowledge that we have problems of inequality even today, we have challenges of poverty, there are interventions, but are these interventions sufficient? No. What is it that must be done? We must make sure that we expand our capability, we integrate the three spheres. There must never be a situation of something is a responsibility of central government or province or local government. Everybody under the district development model, we must all infuse our efforts and have capable men and women who can deliver.
On the state of the ANC looking ahead to the elections this year, I want to touch on the issue of leadership. And you spoke about renewal. It's something that the ANC has spoken openly about it. And there's been a lot of criticism around the leadership. I mean, it's well documented about the Pala matter and so on. There's questions about also still pending about the deputy president. How do you see the perception, if I put it that way, of the leadership of the ANC with regard to the issue of renewal and, I guess, corruption, that many people feel that, well, I mean, these are the people that are not necessarily clean?
Yeah, thanks for that question. There is no organization that has gone through different stages of self-introspection, reflecting on our strengths and weaknesses, and determining the way forward. The issue of renewal comes out of a past that has been painful, where we were tearing each other apart, where there are perceptions and there are realities that are related to corruption, where there are perceptions and realities about the quality of leadership. only the ANC is as transparent as we are. And what we need to do is to, once more, allow the ANC processes to deal with these issues internally, so that then we don't use public platforms that may actually, rather than being helpful, exacerbate tensions. We come from an era of serious factions. We come from an era of labeling one another. We come from an era where there was an abuse of the state to fight one another. And therefore, it had to take the ANC to set up its own integrity committee. It took the ANC to even go to an extent of having intense discussions about what does renewal mean. We now know what renewal means. Renewal means not killing one another, not abusing your positions, but helping the ANC to be what it was meant to be for the people of South Africa, because the ANC is not an organization for members of the ANC. And therefore, anything that must help the ANC to regain and reclaim its role as and end the status of being a leader of society has to be done in the ANC in accordance with the constitution of the ANC, in accordance with the policies of the ANC. And where it so happens that it is Nomvula who's affected, I'm not bigger than the ANC. The ANC must help to rehabilitate. The ANC must help to renew individuals. The ANC must invest on development of its own membership, not even cadership, because you first must develop your member, who must also understand what this organization is about before you even can think about cadre development, because a cadre is one who is advanced. So I think, give us the chance. There are issues that have been out there in the public space. If they affect our leaders, if they affect our members, allow the ANC to deal with them. And what we have all committed ourselves to is that renewal is painful. If you have to burst a wound that we've all been sitting and just ignoring, you can't just put a plaster. You have to make sure that the pus comes out. But what is important about doing that, you don't have to actually drill deeper and actually make the wound to become more toxic. That's the pride of being in the ANC, because we are in an organization that is able to self-correct.
But then, isn't that problematic in its own, in that it's a group of comrades who are trying to discipline each other? So is there, and I mean, I'm sure when you guys are behind closed doors, maybe there are sandals and flying and bottles, we don't know. Or it could be, okay, Nomvula, you were wrong, please apologize. Or Nomvula, you can't do that in public. And that's the point that I'm making, is that it almost sounds like when you talk about the integrity with ANC dealing with itself, that it's a group of friends and comrades that are just cordial with each other.
No, actually, that is so important. I'm sure Tabata kwa Mokoena can't be resolved kwa Mokonyane. There must be rules kwa Mokoena, or more ke ha Mokoena. This is how we're functioning. These are the rules. They can't be the same as kwa Padiaki. And the role that...
Mara, once they affect the rest of us...
I'm not done. But the role of the ANC, precisely because it has a responsibility beyond its membership, it must demonstrate to the broader society. So
fix in-house first.
Let's sort that. If we don't deal with our domestic affairs and think we can sort out things out there, society will not believe us. And hence, I'm saying it has to be done not on an adversarial basis, not through the influence of some in the media, not on which faction leads at a particular time. It has to be consistent, and it has to be something that tomorrow other generations may learn from it. All of us talk about a Morogoro conference, and you come to appreciate that, gosh, those people were quite determined to save the African National Congress. There were other moments in the movement. So we've reached that moment ourselves when we went to a conference and took a resolve that let's renew the movement. It's not something that somebody has instructed the ANC to do. It's members of the ANC having listened to the people of South Africa that something is not good in the movement, let it be sorted out. And I think I'm one of those people that everybody will say Nomvula has a cloud above her head.
Of course, yeah. I
put the ANC first. If the ANC says to me, pack and go home, I'll go and pack because it is for the good of what I've joined. I'm not above the ANC. It must not be done to deal with a person. It must not be vindictive. It must not be influenced by others. It must be something that is consistent, that can also help the individual. And amongst other things that I've learned in the ANC is that it is not an easy thing for the ANC to dismiss a person. It takes processes. It takes leadership. It takes everybody. And if you are a child of the ANC or a leader or a member of the ANC, you subject yourself to those processes and you come out on the other side being a better person.
With that, and allow me to ask,
yes, please.
The issue of former President Jacob Zuma, you know, where he publicly endorsed another party.
Not ask me.
Of course, I'm sure you prepared for this one.
No.
And as you say that no one is above the ANC. Here's former President Jacob Zuma who says, I'm still very much a member of the ANC, but I'm endorsing another party. And my question to you is, it took a bit of time before the ANC could decide or at least pronounce on this matter. During the discussions that you had, how easy or hard was it to come up with such a decision, considering the stature of the person that you're dealing with? I mean, this is not just a rank-and-file member. This is a man who was the president, not only of the ANC, but of the country.
But that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
In the ANC, you don't arrive at a decision easily. This thing arose when we were in Bombela, and we felt we need time, because in Bombela we had a particular responsibility to deal with. We had an ordinary National Executive Committee now at Birchwood. It was not an easy thing. We're all reflecting on it, agonizing about what has actually been put on our desk to deal with.
Were you surprised at the ANC when former president came out and said that?
You wouldn't have expected it coming from former President Jacob Zuma. You wouldn't have expected it. And me personally, I least expected. But when a person has made a resolve to walk away from you, what do? You go back and say, what is it that had brought us together? There was a marriage certificate. We made the vows before the priest. If you're not, I don't know what do they do, but I know that to make the vows, so faslaslane and stuff. And here a person doesn't actually come back to you and say there are these issues. Because one would have expected that with all the problems, including his own challenges that he's going through, there was ample opportunity to engage in the movement. Me included, being part of those who were making those attempts. But once a person reaches this point, you defer to the rules of the game, which is the Constitution. But even as the Constitution dictates, you then look at it and say, what does this now mean in terms of effecting the rules of the game, which is the Constitution? And that's how it happened. Classes never fly. There's no boxing there. There's intense engagement. We spent 4 days in Birchwood, dealing with many other things, not just with this. So it was an unfortunate situation, but we have to now await the response from the former president on what was conveyed to him in line with the NEC decision. And the SG would keep us abreast on that.
Are you not worried about the discussions we were having earlier about the impression that this gives to the public, that this might affect the ANC at the polls? KwaZulu-Natal, here's a man who's got a great following, has had a great following. This might take away from the ANC at the elections in KwaZulu-Natal. Does that not bother you as the ANC?
It does. And hence we have to strategize such that we recover from the lost ground. And we're doing exactly that. We're doing exactly that. The immediate one is to go out and explain exactly what this is all about. 2 is to interact with the electorate in a manner that does not make former President Jacob Zuma our agenda and our mission. We have a lot in our hands, and we have a lot to interact with our people on. Once the person wants to cut ties with you, spend less of your time discussing that person. Find ways and move on. And I think we're moving on as the organization. I so wish that we'll get feedback so that then the whole process can then be behind us.
I want us to, in the interest of time, touch on a few other issues. The last time you and I spoke, we were speaking ahead of the ICJ. This was before the decision was taken. And as much as it's not exactly what the South Africa or the ANC wanted out of this, it seems like it's something that, as the ANC, you are happy with the decision and feel like it was the right move. Just your reaction to that and the expectation going forward. The president did say that we should expect a bit of backlash. In fact, Minister Pandor was saying that maybe she should beef up her security, speak to Bekele about beefing up her security. If those two are worried, should we also be worried as ordinary citizens about this going forward?
The very resolve by South Africans to take a stance, occupy the streets of South Africa and the people of the world in solidarity with the people of Palestine, that was a major breakthrough, including in the United States of America, including right inside Israel. In Tel Aviv, there were demonstrations. It was a major breakthrough. But the biggest victory for us in South Africa was the resolve by our government to go to the ICJ. Never mind the outcome, just that. Because it took this country, South Africa, because we are informed by our historical past. And the people of Palestine living under these conditions were fully behind our cause under the anti-apartheid movement. The outcomes thereof were happy, because what we were pleading for was that there must be a situation where you allow humanitarian aid to go into the West Bank and into Gaza, that there must never be any acts of attacks by the Israeli apartheid defense force, that there must be a release, and the release one was on both sides of those that are detained, arrested, and kidnapped. We are happy, but what we really detest, is how Netanyahu is actually showing the whole world a middle finger. So unfortunate. It's so unfortunate, but it vindicates us, because in the last conference, we have also said it's time to look at reforming these multilateral platforms, so that then other nations, other countries, I don't even want to say nations, other governments, do not then assume a big brother kind of a position. Of course, we have had relationships with them and even with those that support them. There will be attacks against ourselves, but remember, even during our own struggle, for freedom before 1994, we ourselves were calling for the isolation of South Africa. But if we're going to be isolated for a good cause, we must look at other opportunities. They need us. They need South Africa. So this thing, it's not a charity relationship. The president is correct. There's going to be a backlash. We've seen with the issues about the flights to South Africa. But reality is that it is them who want to come to South Africa. So that those things must also be noted. That
it's a two-way relationship.
It's a two-way relationship. But we also have an opportunity. Africa on its own. The president launched the first movement in line with the Africa Trade Agreement last week in Durban. We must begin to trade amongst ourselves. We must Can you imagine if we close and refuse to take our platinum and all other mineral resources? What's going to happen to them?
Now, as we wrap up our conversation with ANC First Deputy Secretary General Nomvula Mokonyane, just maybe one quick point before we get your closing comments. We learned early this morning of the passing of the President of Namibia. Just your take on that as the ANC message of support as somebody who has had a relationship with South Africa, and the President also has spoken about that.
Yes. Firstly, we continue to convey condolences to the people of Namibia and to Comrade President Gingob's family. It's indeed a sad loss. Also, it was quite shocking. We really hope that comrades from SWAPO would actually find comfort in the fact that they are not alone in this trying time. We are in touch, the SG's office, ourselves, are in touch with comrades in SWAPO, and very soon we will actually be connecting with them to go and pay our own condolences there. We were honored just a few months ago that President Gengob visited our NEC, and we had a private discourse with him as officials, and then he went and also addressed our NEC in a closed meeting. And I really think we will forever appreciate the message that he left with us. It's not for your ears, it's not for the public, it's for the good of the leadership of the African National Congress. And I really hope all of us will reflect on that and carry what he wanted to see from the ANC, reminding us that we are not the ANC of South Africa, we are the African National Congress.
Just finally then, we've touched on a number of issues. We've spoken about its voter registration weekend. You spoke about the fact that the ANC is on this new path. But what can you say to South Africans? And especially, it's easy to talk to those that are converted, that are wearing the colors. But to those that are despondent, those that, as I mentioned, are unhappy with load shedding, with lack of jobs, with there's so many issues that we've touched on. What can you say to them as we wrap up this conversation? 30
years of our democracy has not been an easy journey. The good thing is that we have traveled it together. Some can celebrate, others are disappointed, many remain hopeful. And it is only through the African National Congress, working together with the people of South Africa, that informed by our own historical experience, we can be able to improve and make things better, continuously working and improving the kind of programs that we are rolling out so that then they benefit more than those that have already benefited. It has not been an easy journey, but there is a lot that we need to celebrate together.
Nomvula Mokonyane, thank you so much. When you see the president, tell him that when Bafana wins the AFCON, Rukupa holiday.